Year 12, this is your feedback for your practice English exam over the September holidays. Some of the main things are, I was really disappointed to see that not everyone finished all the sections. Even if you shorten what you write in each section, if you get in the entire piece, for example, introduction, body paragraphs, conclusion, you will get marks in every piece. If you leave out one section, that means you're missing out on 10 potential marks. That's a lot of marks to lose. And make sure always that you complete the language analysis first when you're fresh and you can concentrate on all that reading. The text response, it's really important to memorize quotes. There were a number of essays that didn't include evidence or quotes from the text. There were a lot of essays that retold the story. Remember, the assessor already knows the story in detail. Your job is to answer the question. It's important that you map out what you're going to address in order to answer the question so that it's a coherent piece and it's not all over the place. In the introduction, make sure in your text response that you're addressing the direction that you're going to go and that you answer the question and that you use signposts, that is the topics, mention the topics that you're going to be talking about in more detail in each paragraph. For your language analysis, make sure when you're reading through in the reading time or just after the reading time that you're underlining the persuasive techniques as you go. This will save you time. Take note of any connotations that you read about. For example, if someone's referred to as a freedom fighter, that's got the connotation that they're someone positive and strong, perhaps a little bit of a saviour. So look at those connotations and comment on them. In the title generally tells you what the issue is. The subtitle, if there is one, is usually the writer's contention. So it's telling you what the writer's point of view is, what they're going to try and persuade their reader about. Remember, you're there to analyse the language, not the issue or the content. So don't say, for example, Abby Boyer's article was the more persuasive one. It's not up to you to make that judgment. If you log on to ABC Sunday School, you'll find that every Sunday they've recorded podcasts of lectures from experienced English teachers on each topic. So, for example, on skin, on A Christmas Carol, on 12 Angry Men, on using language to persuade. So I've put a link here for you to go to, but I've also made some notes on one of the strategies for an introduction. And the acronym, as you can see at the top, is FICTASI, which stands for form. So in your introduction for your language analysis, comment on the form. So what, where, who, when. What's the issue? Okay, and make sure that you include a line about the contention. So if there are different contentions because there's 2 or 3 different articles, make sure that you mention those. The tone. So if you're imagining listening to this person talking, what kind of tone of voice do you think they'd be using? It's really important for you to have a word bank for tone. Don't say they used a simple tone or a normal tone. You need to have some words up your sleeve to accurately describe tone. Appeal. Who is the audience that they're looking to appeal to? Are they looking to appeal to taxpayers, to students, to parents? You know, if it's a bullying article, it's likely that their target audience is parents, for example, or teachers. The style. What type of language is used? Is it formal? Are they confiding? Is it informal, pretty casual? Is it colloquial? Colloquial language, when we're using language using terminology that we would use in our environment that other people might not necessarily understand. For example, one of the most common colloquial terms in Australia is g'day. And the image, make sure that you make some note of the image in the introduction and then dedicate a paragraph to it within your essay. Make sure that you know your techniques and that you're identifying the techniques. Don't provide a list within your essay, but make it clear that you know what you're referring to with the techniques. That meta language, using the terminology of the techniques, does actually count for something. The most important part, however, of the techniques is What effect has it got on the reader? So if it's sarcasm, is it making the reader think, oh, that's right, I shouldn't be influenced by that particular tactic of that politician? How is the reader being influenced when they read it? And look for the type of message. As you're reading through the articles, you'll be able to have a look and see, are they social messages, moral, environmental, economic, so there'll be hip pocket connotations there, or political. There are usually 3 of these messages within the articles, and we'll just discuss an example. So an example of the article from the practice exam: Melbourne is suffering from urban sprawl. This is an appeal to people who are looking at being environmentally conscious. We should spend the money on public transport. That's a social message of where, and it's also an economic message. The best thing for our city would be to build more high class, so they're talking about more high class buildings, for example. That's a political message. What is the best thing for our city? They're the kind of issues that you can dedicate a whole paragraph to and expand on that. Use those quotes as evidence for discussion. Okay, the identity and belonging. If you're writing an expository piece for an identity and belonging, it is somewhat more straightforward because you're able to discuss the prompt explicitly, you're able to look at the implications and use examples from your text. Use evidence and examples from your text. So if it's growing up Asian, make sure that you're using examples from about 3 of the stories. If you're doing imaginative, which many people did, you need to make sure that you're going into enough depth and you're linking it back to the prompt and the selected text. A lot of the imaginatives that I read were very simplistic, very superficial stories about some family that had moved or split up and how the person didn't fit in. Now, while that does fit into the context, it wasn't nearly complex enough for the quality of a Year 12 essay that would be expecting. 12 Angry Men or A Christmas Carol, so your text feedback. Always nominate which question you've chosen. A couple of people didn't fill this in, so it wasn't clear because what they were doing was basically writing, so if it was 12 Angry Men, basically telling me what the different jurors were responsible for. I've read it, I already know that. The point of your essay was to answer the question. Now, this particular question that I'm referring to ended with, do you agree? It's amazing the amount of people who didn't state in their introduction whether they agree or disagree. They just discussed the issue. If you're asked if do you agree, that's basically yes, I agree or no, I disagree answer. And you need to be really clear on that. It's important not to retell the story. I know we say this all the time, but lots of people are still retelling the story. Think about every paragraph and every paragraph think about, okay, how am I linking this back to the question every single time? Make sure that you're using examples and quotes. There were a number of essays that didn't have any quotes embedded. Your language analysis, don't make a judgment on which article is better or stronger. A number of people did this in your conclusion, and that's not your responsibility to do that. Be specific and use evidence. Don't make vague statements like, it makes us think like the writer. Rephrase that to tell us what exactly the writer is thinking. So talk about the actual topic and issue. Another example of those vague statements is, it allows us to understand Sylvan's point of view. Don't write Sylvan's point of view. Write it or expand on that. Allows us to understand Sylvan's point of view, which was. Be specific. Let us know that you know what you're talking about.